very warm welcome. My name's David Roth and I'm the CEO of the store WPP and chairman of BAV. And it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to Follow the Sun, 24 hours of broadcasting right across the world, to celebrate the launch of the WPP BAV Best Countries study for 2022, produced in conjunction with the US News and Wharton Business School. It's a pleasure to have you join us for this session. This broadcast is going to travel right across the world, starting in New Zealand and ending 24 hours later in the USA. We have an absolutely packed broadcast today. This year's Best Countries study is our fullest and most comprehensive yet. The attitudes of global business leaders, opinion formers and citizens towards nation strengths has changed dramatically in recent years, never more so than in 2022. And we'll be looking at how those changes in values have impacted overall perceptions of our 85 nations covered in the 2022 study. But perceptions of a country only tell half the story. We'll then visit 24 countries to hear what's happening from WPP experts on the ground and sometimes how perceptions of a country don't really reflect the situation. Now, our time together promises to be informative, challenging, stimulating, and I hope fun. So let's get started. How a country is viewed around the world is of huge importance, politically, economically, and socially. It has the ability to contribute to both a nation's hard and soft power. The Romans understood this well. SPQR, an abbreviation for Centanus Populosque Romanus, was arguably the first country branding. It was an emblematic, abbreviated phrase referring to the government of the ancient Roman Republic. You only needed to see the emblem, and invaded countries knew exactly what was in store for them. So country branding itself is not new, but measuring it is. Now in our 7th year, the WPP BAV Annual Best Countries Rankings measures global perceptions of countries against a series of characteristics, impressions that have the potential to drive trade, travel and investment. They also directly affect brands. The study was developed by WPP BAV, the Wharton Business School of the University of Pennsylvania, and US News. The ranking is based on a large global survey which asks a range of people about how they perceive different countries against a range of key attributes. Country branding also has a significant impact on corporate and product brands. The words "made in" can instantly lend credibility and trust to a product or brand that a consumer hasn't previously encountered. That could be enough to convince someone to buy and beyond that, convince them to pay a premium. Likewise, "made in" can prove an instant turn-off if a consumer associates the country of origin with poor safety standards or sees it as being behind the times on social issues or workers' rights. But it's not just a one-way reaction. The perceptions and performance of brands abroad feedback into the development of the country itself. Additionally, willingness for corporates to invest vital FDI is also closely linked to the strength of a country's brand. As local brands and businesses succeed, they generate economic growth as well as lending further positive associations to their country's brand. There's a close relationship between how people feel about a country and their attitudes towards the brand they associate with that country. Strong countries fuel strong brands and vice versa. Think of France and Chanel. Both represent elegance, glamour and prestige. Chanel is intrinsically French and France is synonymous with Chanel. The same can be said of Italy and Ferrari, or Japan and Sony. In each case, brands and the countries are part of a virtuous circle, a symbiotic relationship. In fact, Germany is a really fine example of this symbiosis in action. Germany has come to represent the qualities of durability and engineering that brands like Bosch, BMW, Audi and Mercedes have shown the world that Germany can deliver. Brands can both shape and be shaped by the perceptions of their country of origins. Japan in the 1970s was known as a cheap manufacturing base, but now respected as a world leader for quality electronics and also technology, thanks largely to brands like Sony and Toyota. South Korea has taken a similar path, with Samsung and Hyundai demonstrating to the entire world what modern South Korea is and is doing, so creating consumer predisposition in international markets that favour other South Korean brands. There's a two-way reaction and a multiplier effect for both. This year's study quantifies the impact. We see that 83% of consumers globally agree that consumer brands play an important role in defining a country's culture. 78% also agree that the country a product is made in impacts my preference to purchase it. Our annual Best Countries ranking was first launched in 2016 at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos, the world's largest gathering of global leaders and heads of industry and influence. It's now in its 7th year, and given how turbulent the past 7 years have been across the globe, enables us to see the impact of the changes. The Best Country ranking incorporates the views of close to 18,000 individual members of the public and business decision makers, surveyed in 85 countries across the world. This year's survey was completed in mid-2022. Collectively, the 85 countries in the 2022 rankings account for about 95% of global gross domestic product per capita and represent 80% of the world's population. Individuals surveyed for Best Countries were asked how closely they associated 73 attributes with a range of countries. These attributes were then grouped into 10 categories that were used to calculate the Best Countries ranking, and more on those attributes later. So come with me as we meet our first guests on our interview stage. Well, I'm very delighted now to be joined by Lord Jim O'Neill, the former Chief Economist of Goldman Sachs and a former government UK Minister and Chairman of Chatham House. Jim, Lord O'Neill, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
President Zelensky has said that the price we have to pay for avoiding a third world war is going to be higher energy bills, increases in the cost of living, and a reduction in living standards. And this comes at a time where we see from our BAV Best Countries study that softer values, sort of like quality of life and social purpose, are much more important in defining a nation's brand. But do you think that public opinion at the moment will pressurise governments to hold their current policies, or do you think they will start to look at alternatives?
Nice, easy question that you start with. I don't know, because it is probably for my generation, never mind the younger generation, the first such issue of this scale and complexity that we've seen. So far, it appears Western nations, who are the prime supporters of Ukraine, of course, have been happy to support the government stance on Ukraine, and superficially accept the cost, which is essentially this enormous cost of living shock. But it remains to be seen how that passes the test of time. So as we're seeing here, the government itself is almost definitely going to have to pay for the cost of this dilemma. I can't help finishing my answer to this very tricky question by also pointing out that if we really want to be serious about climate change and alternative energies, having a permanently higher price for carbon emitting energy forms is probably ultimately the sort of thing that is needed. One would imagine accelerate the desire for alternative energies to become more and more part of everyday life.
Now, you were chairman of the Chatham House, one of the world's leading think tanks. Its mission of a world that is sustainable, secure and prosperous is great. What do you feel, how far are we from realising that goal?
Isn't and hasn't really worked the way it's supposed to do on the tin.
So Jim, what should the priorities of nations be then now?
Yeah, so to what should we do about it? You know, I've become linked to a number of things I've been involved in, a big believer in what I broadly call profit with purpose. And we need to have business itself think more about the societal remit of who ultimately they serve. We've lived in an era, and still do, of where the only thing that matters for many, certainly publicly quoted business, is the shareholder. And it's not enough. And private business shouldn't be rewarded if we don't have productivity that goes with these big gains for them. And policymakers need to be more alert to the realities of life rather than just what was in economic textbooks of the 1960s and 70s. And if we don't learn from that, I have a fear that some of the dilemmas that have just blown up dramatically in the past few years out of nowhere could actually get worse.
Now, we started with a hard question, so let's end with an easy one. Lord O'Neill, are you an optimist or a pessimist given the situation we see around the world today?
Right now, I feel a lot more pessimistic than I've done for a long time. However, that said, I've been around the policy area in many different forms for over 40 years, and I've lived through a lot of crises. And the one thing I know for sure is that the crisis you're in, even though it often seems the worst you've ever been through, they come to an end. And one of the big things I've learned is never let a crisis go to waste. And indeed, the making of a business, a leader, or of a country is how they respond to the crisis you are in, because it normally defines how you're going to deal with the future era. So in that sense, there are lots of ways of things that could emerge from all of this mess in a more positive way.
Well, Lord Jim O'Neill, ending on a slightly more positive note than we started, thank you very much indeed for joining us. It's been a privilege to hear what you have to say. Thank you very much indeed.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me joining you.
As we travel around the world together in our Follow the Sun broadcast, we'll be hearing news, views and insights from local WPP company colleagues in 24 of the 85 countries covered in the WPP BAV Best Countries study for 2022. Now, before we go to one of those countries, let's remind ourselves of the WPP BAV Best Countries 2022 rankings from the 85th down to the number 1 country. Let's see what the overall findings of Best Countries 2022 are before we go to Belgium for local insights from the WPP team there. And don't forget to download the Best Countries Metaverse experience for even more global insights from the address on your screen. Historically, military power and finance, banks and tanks were the attributes against which we measured a country's power in the world. Not anymore. So what does all this mean? It shows that a nation focused on providing great quality of life for its people, which cares about the rights and equality, and has a focus on entrepreneurship, is seen as having the most powerful nation brand. This reflects a world today and the factors that influence public perceptions and consumer decision-making, and by implication, a nation's political policy making. So let's take a look at those 10 factors and their weights for 2022. Entrepreneurship, 14.2%. Cultural influence, 10.4%. Power, 5%. Heritage, 3.1%. Adventure, 5.5%. Quality of life, 14.5%. Open for business, 9.3%. Social purpose, 13.5%. Agility, 14%. Movers, 10.6%. So it's clearly no longer just tanks and banks that give a country influence around the world. Softer power, which comes about as a result of entrepreneurship and cultural exports, is increasingly making an impact.
Hello there, I'm Johan, Country Manager of WPP Belgium, and I would like to welcome you in our overview of the results of Belgium in the country study. So thank you for having us here today and to stop at the Belgian office. Whether you are a foreign country, institution, company or traveler, you need to know that Belgium is a country of 3 regions. This means that all 3 regions, Brussels, Flanders and Wallonia, have a diverse cultural landscape with different languages, media, different political institutions, values and even different brands. Belgians, and maybe a lot of international observers, see Belgium as a divided state with complex structures. Even if our politics might be complex, the people of all our regions share more similarities than differences and live very peacefully together. I think it's important to remember that politics exclusively do not shape the heart of a nation. We have always managed to reconcile different views, and the Belgian compromise is world famous. I have with us today Johan, our BAV Consult Director, and Delphine Geeskes, Communications Manager of WPP Belgium. They will highlight the Belgian research findings of our country study.
Thank you, Gio. True, against the complexity of Belgian politics and institution, it is amazing that next to our good standing on social justice, Belgium is ranked within the top 10 on political stability, transparency and trustworthiness. At the end of the day, Belgium keeps on going, even if we hold the world record as a nation with the longest period without a government. Besides our strengths, also the weaknesses associated to a complex structure are clearly shown in our nation's report. Bureaucratic burden, unfavorable tax environment and expensive manufacturing costs are highly associated to Belgium. Still, that doesn't stop us from achieving a great quality of life. We are known for our surrealism, self-mockery and even modesty. Great qualities to put everything in perspective. You should know that Belgium as a nation is still perceived as a brand leader within Belgium. 52% of Belgians indicate their brand love for Belgium, receiving a very similar score in both Wallonia and Flanders. From the BAV study we know that Belgians find their country unique and distinctive. A perception that is not shared internationally, being ranked as one of the least unique nations in the world. Maybe we should see that as a compliment, that globally Belgium has a certain familiarity that everyone recognizes. We were very pleased to see that Belgium was ranked 18th overall, achieving its highest ranking for social purpose, ranked 10th, quality of life, ranked 11th, and open for business, ranked 12th. It means that Belgium understands the growing importance of soft power in the world. Our high ranking on social purpose is not a surprise. Belgium is the prototype of the European welfare state that was shaped after World War II. There was a consensus that social justice on an impartial basis should be guaranteed by the state, which resulted in strong legislation to secure social security, health and education to our citizens. Our public health system is ranked 10th and our educational system ranked 11th. Second, the study shows that Belgium is seen as a multicultural and diverse country, being located at the center of Europe. We have always been a small nation that needed to be open to the rest of the world. So we rank 14th on being connected to the rest of the world, and it shows in the top 10 rankings we get for gender equality, income equality, and on racial equity. So let's hear more on the subject of diversity and equality from Delphine, our communication manager.
Brussels is the home of over 1,000 public and private organizations, including many NGOs and charity organizations, but also the European institutions and the NATO. Besides the corporate network that Brussels has to offer, it's also the second most diverse city in the world. And we believe that this high level of diversity present in the city that our new campus is located in brings us many opportunities to create better futures for our people and the communities around us. However, this is not just a static statement. At WPP Belgium, we actually undertake action. We believe in order to have real impact, we have to go beyond the borders of our agencies. We therefore teamed up all our agencies and created our own local diversity, equity, and inclusion boards. We worked together for a year now and set up some cool initiatives. For example, we did our own diversity, equity, and inclusion charter. We trained all our HR managers with an inclusive recruitment toolkit. We organized all-inclusive lunch sessions, and we did a self-identification measurement. Many of these initiatives, new initiatives, will follow soon. However, diversity, equity, and inclusion is not something that we value only internally, but also in the work that we produce. Many of our agencies have done some inspiring work for NGOs and charity organizations. And our client list includes organizations like UNICEF, Doctors Without Borders, Foundation Against Cancer, the Red Cross, and Special Olympics. And an amazing campaign that integrates all these elements is the Coins of Hope campaign of Wonderman Thompson for Child Focus. And we are going to show it to you now.
Currency is the world's oldest, most shared media, but it's also the most difficult to have made. We needed the agreement of all 19 European governments of the Eurozone to produce and circulate 1 million €2 coins with the face of Liam van den Branden, a child who sadly enough has been missing for 20 years, but whose family has never lost hope. Finally, on International Missing Children's Day, Child Focus, the Belgian Centre for Missing Children, brought the Coins of Hope into circulation. For the first time ever, these Euro coins show the face of a missing child, and even the Child Focus website, with information on all missing children. The supporting campaign simply asked people to spend the Coins of Hope as quickly as possible. We got the support of banks and supermarket chains, all the way to local shops. Custom TV commercials refer to the product that was just seen in the previous commercial, encouraging people to pay for it with the coins.
Pay for your snacks with coins of hope and help spread hope for every missing child.
But not without first sharing a picture of it with hashtag Coins of Hope, or doing a coin swap with any other coin. Politicians and celebrities shared the coins, making Liam's face as famous as theirs. Both national and international news channels quickly followed, spreading hope for all missing children across Europe and even the world.
In a competitive frame of nations, there is still room for improvement if we compare ourselves to other European social welfare states like Netherlands, Germany and Switzerland. Even if we are perceived as a world-performing nation providing welfare and well-being to all citizens, we can always do better. The "we can do better" attitude is a strong motivator to move forward. In the Eurozone, consumer confidence is lower than it was during the pandemic, as very high inflation causes purchasing power to fall sharply. On average, the cost of living is nearly 10% higher than a year ago, the highest in 46 years. Compared to the last crisis, all income classes are being impacted. Our social system is built to ease crisis shocks, and we are the only EU country, together with Luxembourg, where these wages are linked to the price index. So for now, people are not getting poorer if they can bridge the lag factor in this system. But many need to adapt their lifestyle to compensate rising essential living expenses as we speak. Compared to other countries, things are not as bad in our country. Currently, economists estimate that the purchasing power of families in Belgium will decline slightly, whereas that of a Dutch family will fall by almost 7% this year. And Germans will see their purchasing power fall by 4%. We need to acknowledge that this social mechanism put extra strain on our companies, who will see their costs rise again. High inflation leads to an increase in wage costs here faster than in neighboring countries. As a result, the competitiveness of our businesses is deteriorating, whereas on competitiveness on cheap manufacturing, we already score among the weakest of all countries, ranked 76th. So we should be very careful about that. The Best Countries study shows also that we dropped to place 67 as an affordable nation. So in time of crisis, this is something to watch closely as well. A vast majority of citizens expect strong leadership now, so it is difficult for leaders to tell their citizens they can't act. We dropped 22 places of being perceived as a leader, ranked 59th now. For a nation that houses the European Parliament and NATO, we should not neglect our hard powers entirely. As a small nation, we will never be a strong military force relative to other nations, but we should and could be well placed in strong international alliances, capitalize on our political and economic influence. Ask anywhere in the world what comes to mind thinking about Belgium, and you will get beer and chocolate. And the nation's soccer team, the Belgium Red Devils, of course. There is a saying in Belgium that soccer is the only thing that Belgium unites. Also, Belgians themselves remain proud of Belgian fries. The latter, known as chips in the UK, are considered a national institute. This is rooted in our Burgundian convivial lifestyle that goes back to the times of painters like Bruegel, whose painting about festivities are world-renowned. A nice example that really appeals to this Belgian conviviality spirit and pleasure for food is some recent work done for de Vos Lemons by LDV United.
Zeg de Vos. Ja, Lemmens? Op een barbecue leerde een Belg beter kennen, hè? Hoe dat? Ah, wel, dat is een barvrouw.
Och ja, en hier een brandweerman.
Juist. Oh, en dat is een muzikant, hè?
Hoe zie je dat?
Die is toch gitaar aan het spelen? Ja! De saus die iedereen rond een barbecue brengt, dat is
de Vos Lemmens. Aan tafel!
We only ranked 39th on heritage, falling back almost 10 places. Before the corona crisis, Belgium was even ranked 24th. This is incomprehensible for many Belgians. Most of Belgian cities are very old, with some dating back over 2000 years. Our historical cities, Bruges, Antwerp and Ghent, are world-renowned and reflect our rich history. We should see that reflect in our rankings, but on cultural attractions, rich history, geographic attraction and great food, we could be better ranked. There is still a huge potential for Belgium to position itself as a great tourist destination. More than ever, it is a duty of our governments to put Belgium and its heritage back on the map. That is a problem that can be solved. While we dropped in the heritage ranking, our cultural influence was ranked at position 23, gaining 3 positions. The strongest increase we witnessed was for cultural significant entertainment, ending at position 39. Just like the festive paintings of Bruegel are world famous, we count some of the best festivals and events in the world, like Tomorrowland and Rock Werchter. Sport icons like the Red Devils, the successes of the Belgian hockey team at the Olympics, 2-time Olympic gold medalist Naïf Tam, and upcoming race cycling stars like Remco van Evenepoel and Wout van Aert might have contributed to our cultural impact. Also, Belgian filmmaking duo the Dardenne brothers, winning the 75th anniversary prize at the 2022 Cannes Festival, and directors Adil El Arbi and Bilal Falal, who established a name for themselves in Hollywood, are worth mentioning. Art lovers may associate Belgium with the pioneering Flemish paintings of the 15th to 17th centuries, but the country also contributes a huge amount to contemporary art, from distinguished painters such as Michael Boremans, Luc Tuymans, and Pierre Alechinsky. Let's look at a campaign by Mindshare that linked international car brand Mazda with Tomorrowland. Our BAV data shows that Tomorrowland is the most differentiating brand amongst youngsters 18 to 24. And it offers a global reach, which made it an excellent platform to team up with for Mazda to position itself as a fun brand with an open mind to youngsters and future consumers.
De spiraal op de vinylplaat is eigenlijk de muziek gecodeerd. Als de wagen er te traag over rijdt, speelt de muziek te traag. Rijdt de wagen te snel, dan speelt de muziek te snel. En als hij niet mooi de spiraal volgt, dan is het alsof je zou scratchen met de vinylplaat.
Closer to the center, yeah. Keep going. Great, excellent. I can fly high. I can go low.
In respect of cultural influence of smaller countries, we should also look at global media platforms like Netflix, Disney Plus and Amazon Prime that air local series and films on a global scale and could make non-English fiction an instant success and part of global culture, as Money Heist and Squid Game demonstrate. We know Netflix followed Jumbo-Visma cycling team, which could propel Belgian cycling star Wout van Aert to international stardom. I think this offers a new potential for companies and brands to partner with, as local star with great achievement used to have limited sponsor potential. They might now have global reach, a trend that was already going on due to their social media reach. Economically, you should know that Belgium was the first country to undergo an industrial revolution on the continent of Europe in the early 19th century. Obviously, being an open, trade-oriented nation, Belgium remains an excellent place to do business. With respect of legal rights, political stability, well-developed education system, as well as a public health system, companies have access to strong resources. So besides being ranked second on transparent business practices, we are also ranked 14th on having a skilled labor force and having an educated population. Belgium remains a key international economic player, so while population-wise we are ranked 81 in the world, our GDP is ranked 27th and we are ranked 10th in the world for export. True, on bureaucracy we lost almost 21 positions, ranked only 34 on not being bureaucratic. Even though it is easy to launch a business in Belgium, within a few days new companies can be up and running. Larger investments are more complex, but we have excellent trade offices that help foreign companies navigate the national and regional political landscape. The data shows we need to continue to get that message across abroad. So the news that Lego has chosen Belgium to build its new leisure park, the biggest in Europe, is a nice example that we are still offering companies a great place to do business. And we offer an attractive environment to do so, despite our less favorable tax and labor cost position. So, which advice could I give to brands that want to position themselves in Belgium? Now, the best scoring cultural perception is the belief that Belgium has strong consumer brands. We are ranked 14th in the world. Belgians could not agree more. If we look at the top 100 strongest brands in the country, many are local brands like Côte d'Or, the Vos Lemmes, Child Focus, Proximus van den Borre and the Foundation Against Cancer. Research shows that the Belgian Association to Belgium can be a strong platform to connect to consumers. This means that our country of origin has more potential than currently perceived. In times of crisis, companies and brands need to rethink their value and how they can overcome the problems and restrictions that come with it. As Volvo demonstrated so nicely responding to the corona crisis.
The Brussels Motor Show. Every year it attracts 500,000 visitors, accounting for 30% of the sales target of a whole year. So when the 2022 Brussels Motor Show was cancelled, this was seen as a disaster for all major car brands in Belgium. To reach all these potential buyers, we had to approach car sales in a whole new way. Introducing the Volvo Street Configurator. Since Volvo is one of the top-selling car brands in Belgium, we could ask people to look around them for inspiration and help them by introducing the very first app using advanced AI to recognize the configuration of every Volvo in the street. You spotted a Volvo you like? Take a picture and discover exactly which model and configuration it is. And even book a test drive, all within 60 seconds. Up till now, AI was only used for car detection, but after 3 months of training with 100,000 pictures, we could recognize the exact model, color, trimming level, and even the rims. To increase the accuracy of our tool, we sent photographers out into the streets to capture the models they came across from all different angles. These photos also form the core of a national campaign, inviting people to look around and spot the Volvos they like. Turning the street into a showroom turned out to be a successful move by Volvo.
Je neemt de foto van een Volvo in de buurt.
Et voilà, vous voyez tout de suite que c'est bien le modèle.
Press announced it as the future way of buying cars. We generated 10% more configurations than last year, 29% more offer requests, and 56% more test drives. This resulted in 4,492 cars sold in January, making it the best month ever in the history of Volvo Belgium. The Street Configurator, turning the street into a showroom. Volvo.
Thank you, Delphine and Johan. In times of crisis, it's hard to remember that Belgium is an amazing place to live and work. But let's face it, there is room to do better if we want to improve the perception of Belgium to investors and tourists. I'm absolutely convinced that as WPP Belgium, we have all the tools and creativity in place to unlock the potential of our current and future clients. Have a nice day!
Well, I'm absolutely thrilled and delighted now to be joined by Dr. Stacey Graham, who is the Global Racial Equity Program Director at WPP. Stacey, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for the invitation.
This year we see social purpose becoming significantly important, which is a good thing. Why do you think that's so?
I believe in the survey you define social purpose around a few categories, such as caring about gender and racial equity, the environment, human rights, and so forth, right? And what we understand about humans is we have an innate desire to have a reason for being. That's another word for purpose. So I'd say if we look at what's happened in the world in the last 2.5, 3 years, that is definitely catapulted into the mainstream. We have all these things coming together that are pinpointing, illustrating how we're failing as a collective.
And do you think that failure as a collective is something that's now being exposed right across the globe?
Absolutely. I would say that even before 2020, we could see it happening, but there's something about a restriction of freedom of movement, right, that makes people sit at home and have nothing else to do but recognize and look into everything that's wrong with the world, if you will. And so I think that it's on people's minds. What does it mean to be in the collective when I'm sitting at home and can't leave my house anymore? What does it mean to really be connected as a society? How do we care for the most vulnerable? And to be really honest, with COVID-19, we didn't do a great job of that. So I think people are asking different questions than they were 2 to 3 years ago.
And I think I found it quite interesting to see the relationship between this movement, I mean, let's call it a movement, coming from the population upwards.
Absolutely. I mean, we also see that some of our health officials do move more politically than we would have expected. But there were people across the world who made the decision to wear a mask even when it was no longer mandated, who stayed at home even when they didn't want to, who got on the streets for probably the largest social movement since 1968, right? It was a global social movement to bring awareness to racial inequality. So I think there's a coming together even in times of divisiveness.
Now, one of the things we've seen in the study is this sort of interrelationship between a country's brand and companies' brands, and we're seeing that interrelationship even more sort of mingled and prevalent this year. So what should companies do to improve their social purpose in relation to how their country is seen?
That is a great question. I think that is something that they're still figuring out. But one thing we know for sure is people aren't simply incentivized by money. That's not enough to keep employees today. Employees want to work somewhere where they feel proud of not only the work that they do, but the things that the company stands for. They want to see their company standing up for social issues that they personally care about.
Stacey, why do you think suddenly companies are finding a political voice as opposed to purely a corporate voice?
I think to an extent, we have been able to observe this shift away. When I studied, there was a clear connection. The business strategy has to align with shareholder value. That's all we care about, maximizing shareholder value. And there was a notion that maximizing shareholder value stood in opposition to a social purpose, if you will. And today, I think people are recognizing that's actually not true. And we increase shareholder value when we can ensure that we have high employee engagement, low turnover, and people care about what they do in the company they work for.
Well, Stacey Graham, that's a fantastic place to stop. This whole topic is something that we are all going to have to understand a lot better, and not just understand it, but also ensure that it's actions as opposed to merely words. But for the moment, Dr. Stacey Graham, the Global Racial Equity Programmes Director at WPP, thank you very much indeed for joining me.
Thank you.
Hello and a very warm welcome. My name's David Roth and I'm the CEO of the store WPP and Chairman of BAV. Thank you very much indeed for joining me in this very special metaverse experience. Exploring the WPP BAV Best Countries 2022 study in conjunction with Wharton Business School and US News. Here we are in the Arrivals Hall, where you'll be able to discover the key insights from this year's study relating to global trends. Here you'll also find exclusive interviews with global experts and analysis of the data. And what a year we've had. There have been a lot of changes from last year. From here you can also go and visit the 85 countries that are ranked in this year's report. Each of those countries have their own individual room where you can explore a wealth of data and insights into each individual country. You might well see some surprises along your journey. And in the departure area, you can discover more about the study itself. Enjoy your trip around the BAV Best Countries 2022 Metaverse. Well, we're almost at the end of our broadcast. A big thanks to everybody from the local WPP companies who've participated, and of course our central team that's put together all of our Follow the Sun 24 hours of broadcasting, to our directors, to Dasgupta, to Paul Reifer, and our producers, Sarah Cousins and Lady Victoria Robinson. Well, all it's left for me, David Roth at WPP, to say thank you very much indeed for joining, and the next broadcast follows shortly on the hour.
if you're done.